joining us for Caroline, David, Matt. This is number 7. Did we decide yesterday?
7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah, of our.
Who's counting?
That's right. Of
I
our
lost count.
of our weekly forums. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, sort of just the architecture of this is we have some initial comments. Most of those initial comments this morning, I think, will be made by our high school principal, who's joining us for a second time. Bill, you're the first guest invited back for a second time, so lots of pressure there. So we'll each have some comments on just some of the things that are happening right now. And then we'll turn this over to Mr. McGowan, and then we will take questions. We take those through the Q&A function. So if you want to type in a question relative to something that we've talked about or something else relative to the school closing, and now we're pivoting sort of to start talking about reopening, to any of those issues, please just use the Q&A function, and then I'll sort of moderate those questions after and get them out to the appropriate panelists. I don't want to assume that people know everyone who's here, because some of you may be joining us for the first time. So I'm joined by David Hobbs, who's our Assistant Superintendent, Caroline Erikilian, who's our Executive Director for Student Services, Matt Farrar, who's our Business Administrator, Rhonda Evans, who actually runs the whole show, and Bill McGowan, our high school principal, and I'm Bill Lapini, our SAU 21 Superintendent. So let me start with just a comment on, and I'm going to focus this morning on return to school. So we have started to talk about quite seriously now the conditions for return to school. You've heard us talk about the end of the year. We're going to do some of that today. You've heard us talk some about summer. And we are now focused on return to school. Some of you may know, because you may have seen it, that we've put together a structure to study the various scenarios under which we would or might return to school. And we've created an overall task force on that group. We have our first meeting on Monday. And we then a series of working groups to look at the variety of topics. We will have a report that will spell out the issues related to returning to school by June the 12th. We intend to be very, very public about this process and that report, providing our boards with weekly updates, providing written updates to the community, possibly up to weekly as we work through the variety of issues. The subgroups are focused on crisis response, return to instruction, post-secondary issues, which have to do with our seniors in particular who are graduating and assisting them with their appropriate next steps, also including the class of 2021, because we know this will impact them, technology, and then operations. And those are the study groups that we'll have going on. We're anticipating guidance from the Department of Education on return to school. The problem, like the issue that we're going to talk about this morning, is that that guidance is going to be late. So we're anticipating we will get guidance from them on June 30th. And of course, in our overall study and our overall look at reopening schools, that's very, very late. And we will have many decisions and issues on the table long before they put out their report. And so that's what we're going to be starting this week. As I said, that task force initially meets on Monday, and we're really looking at 3 scenarios. So you're going to hear a lot about this over the summer and over the coming weeks. So one scenario is that we return on time, but we know that even in that scenario, we're looking at the need for social distancing, the need for masks, PPE, those kinds of things. So what if we return on time, and what does that look like? And what do we need to have in place to be able to do that? The second is that we don't return on time, that we have a start that looks like what we've done this spring, that looks very much like remote instruction, and we know that that's still a possibility. So we're going to look at those scenarios as well. What does that mean in terms of the technology? What have we learned from the spring that we need to do better in the fall if we happen to see those that kind of a scenario? And then thirdly, and this is the one you may be reading the most about because it's the one that we've seen most, and that is that a lot of the medical community believes that we can anticipate rolling closures over the course of next year, of course, until there's the right kind of vaccines and all in place. And so what does that look like? What does it look like to have to open and close and maybe do that throughout the school year? And so we're studying all of those scenarios and all of the pieces that come with those scenarios: transportation, operations, sports, what does instruction look like, all of those things. So it's a very large task, and we get started this Monday. And so we'll have lots to say and lots to report to you and lots to ask you about in terms of those issues as we go through this process. So that's the piece I wanted to lay on the table. Dr. Hobbs, let me turn it over to you. I'm going to go around and ask each of our panelists to make a brief comment because, of course, the main focus this morning is the high school, and that's why Mr. McGowan's here with us. So, Dr. Hobbs.
Sure, thank you. Am I coming through okay today?
You are.
All right. Well, like Dr. Lapini said, we are starting to look at what school is going to look like when we come back in the fall, and we're considering those various scenarios. I'll be working, coordinating the return to instruction group, and just to give you an idea of kind of the architecture that we're looking through. Obviously, we have these different scenarios, but some of the big questions that are starting to be put on the table. One is assessing learning progress. How do we identify gaps in learning that have occurred throughout this remote learning period? What are we going to do in terms of diagnostics and or assessment in order to make sure that we identify that? That's one. Two is augmenting instruction and curriculum. How are we going to change our methods in a way that produces or helps with equity issues that have emerged? It includes an audit of what's currently working in remote learning and what's not working in remote learning. It includes grading and assessment. What are our practices around that? And of course, student accountability and teacher accountability. That's part of how we change instruction in the fall. Third is we're having considerable conversations, or we will have considerable conversations around structural supports. What does a schedule for learning look like in kind of these various scenarios? We got to make sure that I don't know if Kathleen's on this call, but we got to make sure that we overlap our schedules or coordinate our schedules with SAU 90, because we do have a lot of teachers that are parents, and we do have a lot of siblings in two different SAUs. So we got to make sure that our structures line up. Likewise, that goes along with staffing. We need to identify teachers who may need to continue remotely for one reason or another, and teachers that would be able to come back into the building. And lastly, from my perspective, is going to be professional development. What do we need to put in place in terms of transition meetings? Maybe we have opportunities for vertical meetings this spring or maybe in the fall, where teachers can meet and understand where they left off and where the new teacher needs to kind of pick up. We need to have some professional development or audits around our use of technology, what we need and what we see moving forward. And of course, we have to think about new teacher orientation, onboarding, and those kind of issues, making sure that people who are coming into our system understand what we're doing, our core values and beliefs, and our approach to this whole thing. So that's kind of a big overarching overview of the Return to Instruction Working Group, but we're looking forward to having our first committee meeting this week. And that's David. Kind of where we are. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Eric Killian.
Thank you. Just a couple updates this week. As far as the reentry plan, I'll be chairing the crisis response group. And as Dr. Hobbs outlined, we'll be looking at the scenarios and how we can make sure that we're addressing the mental health of staff, students, and families as we move forward, whatever our reentry looks like. So that'll be the main focus of the crisis response for social emotional topics, mental health needs. Special education directors are planning for summer for a remote learning situation. We're also waiting for guidance from the state, supposed to come out this Friday, regarding if there's any kind of leeway in the restrictions as far as social distancing and capacity on transportation, all kinds of things that we have to consider when planning for summer. But at this point, we're planning for all remote instruction programs. Our meal district program is at an all-time high. I think I heard we served over 25,000 meals since we began remote learning. That's over both our locations, Seabrook and Winnacunnet distribution sites, and pickup and delivery. If you need more information on that, we do have the bus routes posted on our websites and the days. Just want to point out that we'll have a little bit of an adjustment to that schedule over Memorial Day weekend, or following Memorial Day. We'll have meals Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, the week following Memorial Day. So we'll still have 3 days for that, just pushed out 1 day. Lastly, I'd like to point out one new resource for parents. We have posted our care, concern, and supports for parents on our websites under the COVID-19 page. And a new resource that just came out from the Iris Center at Peabody College at Vanderbilt University. This is Parents Supporting Learning in the Time of Pandemic. So there's everything on there from what is my role, how to get my child ready to learn, how to talk to my child about this situation, everything from, what if my child has a disability, social and emotional needs. So we have that link posted on our document, Parent Care and Concerns, under the COVID-19 page, but you could also just Google Iris Center Parent Supports in a Time of Pandemic, and it'll bring you there. So that's an excellent resource. I hope parents can find support there. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there who have partnered with us in this remote, you're always partners with us, but really now more than ever, parents have partnered with us to deliver remote instruction. So I hope at some point during this kind of snowy weekend, you have some time to focus on yourself and honor all the hard work that you've been doing to support your children. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Mr. Farrar?
Can I just interrupt real quick? It was brought to my attention that the phone number wasn't on the website. Somebody had called in and asked. We do have call-in listeners, so somewhere they got the phone number. But if anybody knows anybody that's texted them or reached out to them, the phone number is on there. So please go ahead and check the SAU website. And I apologize for that.
Thank you. Mr. Farrar?
Morning. So from a financial standpoint, Dr. Lupini and I have met with all of our individual town administrators in our member towns. We've been meeting with them over the last 2 weeks. And really our focus was to talk about the challenges ahead for our communities during this pandemic. And specifically, we want to better understand their perspective on potential issues with revenue collections and budgets. During that conversation, we also provided them with information about the school's financial outlook, all the cost-saving activities that we're conducting, and then potential funding sources that we could leverage via federal or state funds. I think there was a common theme in that there is a level of uncertainty to the degree in which this crisis will affect our town tax revenues. All of our towns are very diligently analyzing the data, based on a number of factors. However, there really isn't an existing model that exists that can really accurately predict how this type of pandemic you know, and the resulting economic consequences will affect our tax collections. So each of those towns have indicated that you know, they should all have a better idea after July 1, which is when property taxes are due. So as such, we have set up follow-up meetings with each of our towns. You know, some are going to be monthly, others we're going to wait until after July 1st. But we do plan to continue that dialogue and really partner with each of our towns and make sure that we work together, you know, as we navigate this economic crisis. So now, as we look to next year, and I've mentioned this previously, but there will be additional costs when we better understand what school will look like, and what that investment is, you know, that's necessary to return. So as part of the return to school task force that we are initiating, and those individual working groups, we will be quantifying those estimated costs for all those potential scenarios that we're looking at. So I will be working with the operations team. So we'll be looking at the logistics of returning to school, you know, under those scenarios. So that would be, you know, we'd be looking at personal protective equipment, PPE, you know, would there be social distancing requirements, testing, those type of questions. And then we'll also be developing recommendations regarding transportation, food service, facilities, and athletics. So meanwhile, you know, concurrently, we are meeting with each of our building principals, and we're starting the process of you know, reevaluating our budget assumptions and creating new budget priorities should there be an effect and we need to reduce expenditures in order to fund new investment due to the reopening and what that looks like. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts, but we are, you know, we have instituted teams, and we are working towards that reopening and quantifying the financial piece to it. And finally, I just want to again thank the Joint School Board, as they did approve the continuation of the free food service program through the summer. And again, thank you to you know, Dr. Eric Kalian, our school nutrition managers, the school nutrition staff, our social workers, and educational associates. It's really been a team effort, and they've all been working tirelessly to make this program successful. And to you, our incredible community, thank you. You know, your support has helped raise, I think we're $28 from $10,000 in donation. So we've raised about $10,000 for this incredibly important program. You know, as Caroline mentioned, as Dr. Eric Kalian mentioned, we're serving approximately 300 students per day. We expect those numbers to increase as this economic crisis extends through the summer. And I do want to reiterate that this program is for all students and all families, regardless of financial need. Even if you just need a break, you know, from the ever-present meal preparation, work while you're working remotely, while you're helping your kids with their schooling, and while we're all just surviving. Just please go grab a meal. It's there for you. And again, if you're interested in supporting this program, you can find the link to the GoFundMe page on our SAU 21 website. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll mention here that the other two chairs, and people identify themselves as chairs of three of the groups. The other two chairs are Jason Saltmarsh, who's the technology director at Winnacunnet High School, who's going to work with our technology group, and Donna Couture, who's the ELO coordinator at Winnacunnet High School, who will chair the post-secondary response. All of those subgroups are set up to meet this week. So we are moving quickly to begin to try to get some answers to what next year could look like. And I want to, I see a couple of the members of the group are on this call. So thank you to the many teachers, parents, support people who have all said yes when we asked them to be on this group. I want to thank our union, who's been a real great partner in putting together that group, our teachers union and our CESPA union. Linda Libby, I see, is on this call. Terrific partners in doing all that work. And just a thank you to people for being so willing to dive into these really difficult and gnarly questions that we're gonna take on. So with that, Mr. McGowan, I don't think 121 people are here to hear me today. I think they're here to talk to you. So I'll turn this over to Bill McGowan, and then we'll take a look at the questions.
Good morning. I hope everybody is safe and healthy. And I just want to thank several different groups. I first want to speak to the students. I understand that this has been very difficult for you. You have had your life turned upside down. Trips have been canceled, performances have been canceled, and sports have been canceled. But please stay focused for the remaining weeks of this trimester. We are here to help you. We're here with you together, and we will get through this together. So stay focused, reach out to me, reach out to the teachers, but we will get through this. I want to thank the staff for what they've done at the high school, assisting me and assisting the students. We've had our challenges and struggles, but overall we're making progress, and I thank the staff for that. And finally, I would just want to thank the parents. That you have been very supportive throughout this process. You have provided great feedback on the surveys. The students have too, that maybe we can't incorporate all of it, but it has changed our thinking as far as how we continue this trimester, and if we need to in the future, continue remotely. And we all hope we don't have to, but we are making sure that we have the plans in place and the proper protocols in place to make it successful for everybody. Our goal is to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments and of all the seniors, of all students, but especially the seniors this year. I'll just let you know what we've put into place so far, what's going on as we lead up to graduation. Last week, well, actually this week, this past Thursday, the Kemp-Free parents distributed 200 signs to all the graduating seniors. I was assisting in that. Thank you to First Student who provided a bus to take me around town, because if I didn't have that bus, I'd probably still be driving around all the towns. But we did distribute those, and the students really appreciated that. So thank you for all those involved. With respect to the yard signs, what Winnicott High School is doing, we will also be purchasing yard signs with the student's name on it. Those will be available over the next few weeks when we distribute caps and gowns. You have also heard that we'll be placing banners up on the lamppost around the school. There's a question a few weeks ago, will the students be able to have the banners? I do not have enough banners to provide, I do not have enough lampposts to provide banners to everybody, but we are purchasing pennants. The company that's making the banners will be producing pennants that we will be giving to all the seniors that graduate this year. There's a music senior night scheduled. Mr. Moore and Mr. Martin are collecting performances. That will be a virtual presentation, and that will air May 26th at 7 p.m. We're still moving ahead with scholarship night. Seniors that are receiving scholarships, we're working with the presenters and the different groups. We're putting that together. Mrs. Schafter will be contacting you over the next few weeks if you receive the scholarship. But again, that will be a virtual presentation, and that is scheduled to happen on June 3rd at 7 o'clock. The art show, another big event that we can't do live. All the teachers in the art department are taking videos and pictures of the artwork they have, and they will be putting a virtual art show together. That will be scheduled sometime in the next few weeks, and we'll get more information out to you. I know Mr. Abood is putting together a presentation of the senior athletes, so that will be available shortly. With respect to graduation,
Bill,
Um,
Bill, I'm sorry, just let me jump in here and ask you a question or two to help sort of frame this graduation discussion. We've talked the last few weeks, and I've talked probably every day, that we were expecting this guidance from the Department of Education. We finally got that guidance on Wednesday, and as I think Bill and I expressed in our letter to seniors and families, we were disappointed in the quality of the guidance that we received. I'll give you one example, a question that I went back and asked the commissioner almost immediately. There was very early in the guidance, it referred to the governor's executive order about gatherings of 10 people or less. And in the very next paragraph gave an example of an event that we might want to look at as something like the Air Force style graduation, social distancing, masks, etc. In a call with superintendents on Wednesday, the commissioner admitted that the Air Force graduation would not comply with the executive order. And so that's one example of some of what we experienced with that guidance. The commissioner was very clear in that call and subsequent to that call that there are 3 or 4 guiding principles here with respect to what school districts can and should do. One is that we must follow the executive order of no planned gatherings of 10 people or more. Second, that we must maintain in anything that we do social distancing, and we must be able to maintain social distancing both before and after the event. I'll let that sink in for a moment, because that's a very difficult thing to do with people who are excited about graduation. And so we've paid a lot of attention looking at those pieces and trying to figure those out. I will tell you, in the call with the commissioner on Friday, he did a sort of straw poll of school districts, and over 90% of school districts are planning something that I would call a hybrid model. He asked specifically, are districts doing online or are they doing in person? And about 90% of the districts indicated that they were doing something that was more of a hybrid, that is, that had some in-person components and some online components. And so I just want to give that framing, because that's really the framing that Mr. McGowan and his team are working within to make sure that they can comply with. I didn't mention the third of those tenets, and the third of those tenets that the commissioner mentioned in his call was screening. And he talked specifically about having some kind of screening mechanism in place for people who would participate in a face-to-face ceremony, whether that is temperature taking, whether that is some kind of screening questionnaire. But those are the examples he used as to the kinds of things that would be the advice that districts would follow. And somebody asked a question I saw in the questions about whose medical advice are we following? Are we following the CDC? And the answer is, all along, we've been looking to the CDC and we've been looking to DHHS for their guidance on these. And that's who the department looks to. And they were one of the agencies that had to review anything that the state published in terms of guidance for the end of the year. And so that's why I think if you're paying attention to this, you see many examples of districts talking about sort of these hybrid models. And so I just want to give that framing so that you understand sort of the context of where Mr. McGowan and his team are looking and need to look in terms of how anything that we put in place to honor students. And I'm with Mr. McGowan. We've said it in 3 consecutive letters that we want to make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure this group of students are honored and that their accomplishments are celebrated. We have another overarching concern, and that is to make sure that we maintain the safety and health of our communities. And so we have to try to balance those 2 things. And so, Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to sort of give that framing for the work that I know you and your team are involved in.
No, as Dr. Lupini said, we're taking a look at all options. And again, we do have those guidelines and recommendations that we need to make sure that we follow. Our goal is to make sure that you are recognized, that we can celebrate your accomplishments, and we will work towards that given the framework that we have. At the same time, we will be scheduling times for you to pick up your caps and gowns. They are supposed to come in next week. So we're working on a schedule on how to get that to you logistically, again, to make sure that we follow those guidelines. The teachers would love to see you. We're taking a look at some ideas as far as how we can have the teachers available to either wave as you come by or do something. So, but everything we're doing, we're trying to put into place to ensure the safety of the students, of the staff, so that one, we can achieve what we want to do, but we do it in a safe manner, but you are recognized. I do know that this pandemic has built a stronger you. Each of you are stronger. I think we're all stronger as we end this. And what you have accomplished and achieved at high school, or even, you know, K through 12, those accomplishments cannot be taken away from you, regardless of how we celebrate them. So please remember that we are going to do the best to recognize you publicly, but those accomplishments will always be with you. So do not let that be taken away from you.
So Bill, timeline then, I know we talked about a timeline for this week because I see some questions about people wanting to understand specifics. And I know we talked about a timeline that involves you and I meeting with the senior class officers this week. And so you want to relay that?
So yeah, we're going to meet with the senior class officers on Monday. And based on that meeting, we hope to have a final plan as far as what things look like by Wednesday, May 13th, as we stated in the letter. Again, until I receive the caps and gowns next week, but we expect that whole distribution will probably occur the week of the 22nd. But more details will come out on that based on how how the materials come in and what that distribution plan looks like. You know, we have over 200 students that we need to distribute things. We don't want to take 3 or 4 days to do it, so we're working at different ways that we can distribute it. Again, making sure that we stay within the guidelines that we have to adhere to. I'm going to say the week of May 22nd, you'll be receiving more information as far as how students can come and pick up caps and gowns. And then, you know, after midweek, towards the end of next week, we should have more details as far as what that plan would look like as far as the actual graduation, the different models, if it's a hybrid model, what that looks like. But again, that will be outlined. And I always say that by when we send out the update at the end of next week, we will have specific dates and times and things to move ahead.
Great. So Bill, I just want to make sure I summarize and make sure you're able to be clear on this. So we're looking at, by the end of this coming week, a final plan after we meet with seniors, you meet with your team in the middle of the week or so to firm up the finality of that plan. And you said distribution of caps and gowns sometime during the week of the, is it the 8th? Because this is the week of the 11th, the week of the 18th?
May 22nd, no, the week of the 18th.
Week of the 18th, you'd be looking at distribution of, so that'll be part of that announcement as to how you're going to do caps and gowns.
Yes.
So for folks with us this morning, distribution of caps and gowns, week of the 18th, final plan for graduation announced by the end of next week. After, and you know, and I want to give Bill a lot of credit here. Bill's made a lot of commitments to the senior class officers, the seniors themselves, about discussing this with them, and wants to go back on those and talk with those students about where we are with this planning on Monday. We made that a commitment, and we're going to honor that commitment. Bill, what I love about these calls are the texts I get from some of our colleagues. So I just have a question here from one of our colleagues that says, what about distribution of yearbooks?
We are hoping, we're hoping that the yearbooks arrive in time, that we will do that with the caps and gowns. I would like to have as many things distributed at one time versus just given logistics to having students come back and forth. The other question that has come up as far as the time capsules. 4 years ago, the senior class and freshmen in the Warrior Block put together the time capsules. In the past, we've opened those as the classes as a group so they can reflect back on the 4 years. So we're trying to figure out what the best way to do that and get that back to them. So hopefully things arrive that we can have a single distribution. That's the goal, and that may affect the timeline a little bit based on when we receive that. If not, we may have to have more than one distribution or somehow Worst case, if the yearbooks come in late, we will have to mail those to the seniors.
Great, thank you. So we should get started with some questions. Some of them are not necessarily graduation questions, but they are questions about some things that are on people's minds. So let me help you through these, Bill. So there's a question here. Someone says, I'm trying to do research for college with my junior. A friend of mine, I'm assuming this is in another district, is using Naviance that her school recommended as a package center from the school. I tried to access Winnicott College seminar, but I didn't have any luck. Do you recommend Naviance as well? And I guess I would add to the question and say, so how do you recommend a parent or a student who's trying to do this kind of work with their junior, what should they be doing?
We do have Naviance, and we do have another program. I will make sure that we get that information out to that student and put it on the website for all students, but as far as how to access.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Contact the guidance counselor, but we do have those programs to assist juniors, so we will get that information out.
So people could contact their guidance counselor, who could put them in touch with the right information, the actual use of Naviance, or you'll put something out in the parent update next week about this.
Yeah, it's this I can probably, once I get the answer, I'll put it. In no sense to wait till next week. I'll get that out as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Here's a fun one, Bill. When will class schedules for trimester 1 be available? Yeah, Bill, when will they be available?
We are right now in the initial phases of building the schedule for next year. Typically, in a traditional year, we have those available to students the last week of school. I do not think that we will have those available before June 4th, but we are working on those, and then I'll work with guidance, and this is one of those things that I will provide an update as far as how we will distribute those. I believe in the past we can actually email the schedules to the students, so we'll put a plan in place, because the other thing that usually happens with that is when we do it in school, students have time to go down and see the guidance counselor to confirm and make any changes. So we will also have to put a plan into place and what that looks like, either remotely and/or as the summer progresses, how we can make adjustments over the summer.
And of course, this is all made easier this year by the fact that you're having a change. We brought on a new curriculum coordinator and a new director of guidance, right in the middle of all of this. So easy to get those schedules done.
And the fortunate thing is they are both working with us now, so the transition shouldn't be too bad. I believe Dave Hobbs has been involved in some of that.
Yes, thank you for Dave Hobbs, right. Okay, so I answered the question about medical recommendations. We are largely CDC and DHHS, as well as, I will say, we have a phenomenal group of nurses. I know a couple of them are on this call. They are all over this return to school committee, and have provided us with some exceptional documentation in terms of the issues that we should be thinking about as we consider return to school. So all of those parties involved. I think we've answered what will senior graduation look like. That announcement is coming this coming week. And then Dr. Hobbs, you may want to jump in with Mr. McGowan on this. How will you know if a student did well enough with online learning to be able to keep up with school subjects that needed a prerequisite?
Well, right now, the way teachers are keeping track of grades and how well students are doing, we're also keeping track of the competencies. So when we're through with all this, teachers will be able to review what competencies they've been able to cover in a class. We do know that we will not be covering all the competencies that we would in a normal year. The work that we have planned with the teachers over the summer would be to take a look at what gaps there are in the curriculum and make those adjustments in the classes as we come back in the fall.
Dr. Hobbs?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I would echo the sentiment on the competency reporting. It's kind of the silver lining of competency reporting, in that we're actually going to have information about what we've covered and what we haven't rolling into next year. I think I'll answer this question, I guess, from a 9-12 perspective, although it's a K-12 issue. One of the things we want to do, as I mentioned earlier, is facilitate those transition meetings, whether that looks like a department meeting. Hey, look, this is what I covered in physical science. This is what you covered in biology, whatever the case may be, making sure that that verbal communication with teachers takes place. We're having a larger conversation around diagnostics. Obviously, the last thing that anybody wants to do is create a large standardized test system in the fall of 2020. However, we are looking at local assessments. We do have smaller assessments that can be used as diagnostics coming in just to see where students are when they walk in the door. And that also goes with the statewide assessment. I know that's been pushed back, but they do have what's called a benchmark assessment, which is a quick online diagnostic that we might be able to leverage. So we're looking at all those things and trying to balance that against, look, we just need kids in our classrooms, and we need to have that conversation with them and see where they are face to face.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a number of comments here, Bill. I think this goes back to your reference to the distribution of signs last week, of people really appreciating the work that Chem Free did. Seniors who are reporting how wonderful that was to get those signs. Parents reporting how wonderful it was to get those signs. Just a lot of praise for that group, and I know you'll pass that on for if the members of that group aren't necessarily on with us this morning. Please pass on how much feedback that we got that they've done. Their efforts are appreciated. AP exams, was there thought to accommodations for students taking AP exams in these coming 2 weeks? Example, AP exam at 4 p.m., lightning, other classwork that day. Bill, can you talk about what the discussions have been around AP exams, which are coming up in a very, very different format than normal, but are happening, I believe, in the next 2 weeks, right?
The AP exams will be occurring in the next 2 weeks based on the different content areas. The format this year is a 45-minute online exam. I will address this with the teachers, and yes, make sure that we reduce the classwork so the students do well.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you, whoever raised that. What about yearbooks for the rest of the grades other than seniors?
We'll have to come up with a plan.
Bill, we delight on this. We delight on our program at playing Stump the Guest. It's a lot of fun.
I think it goes back to the discussion that we've had at the SAU level and with my team as far as collecting materials, students returning materials, and things like that. So I think once we finalize that plan, we may be able to incorporate the students receiving the yearbooks.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions. I think this is a good time to try to answer them all. There's a number of questions throughout here about what about a pickup of a prescription? What about a pickup of materials? Those kinds of things. I've asked each of the principals by the end of this coming week to submit to us a plan for having students and teachers pick up materials. And I think what Mr. McGowan is saying is that in that look at having students pick up materials, they would try to accommodate things like yearbooks and prescriptions and all in that schedule. We're looking right now at those things being scheduled across schools in the SAU during the week of June 1st through the 4th. So we're trying to develop schedules for how people can come in safely to get materials that were left in the school when we left on the 13th, and also pick up things like yearbooks and all. So that'll be part of that. How could the kids go about trying to sign each other's yearbooks? Safely, I have no idea right now. I don't know if the high school will take a look at how that might happen, but when you think about the precautions that are part of that end of the year guidance, right now I don't have an answer as to how that could happen safely. I'm sorry, I wish I did. There's a comment, Bill, about we're still using Naviance. We're also looking at, is that SCORE?
Yes, that's the new program.
Okay.
And then Melinda Schaffner is the person that juniors should contact, but I'll get that information out to everybody.
Great. There's a couple questions here. I saw there's one down further about final exams. How are final exams being handled?
In the past, we had a final exam schedule or a trimester exam schedule. We are not putting that schedule in place. Teachers will either give a regular unit assessment or a final exam based on the time that they have class. But the final exams, as we have known it, will not occur. So that's going to be either individual exams by the teacher and or projects based on the current schedule they have. The last day for seniors is that Friday, May 29th. So I'll make sure that the teachers get a schedule out if there are going to be exams during that period that they overlap. I do know that with the AP exams occurring as early as they do and online, I have seen that the results from those AP exams may be available before we close the grade book. So typically in the past, that comes back afterwards.
Great, thank you. There's a question about the banners. Why are banners being hung at the high school rather than around town? They would not be seen at the high school. I'll answer a part of this. The major problem is because we don't represent one town. We have kids from a number of towns at Winnicott. And so that was, I know when Bill and I talked earlier about this, that was a challenge because our students aren't just from Hampton or Hampton Falls or Northampton or Seabrook. They're from all those towns. But Bill, you want to address about the decision to put them up at the high school?
Well, I mean, at the high school, I mean, we had installed a few years ago banners, just in general banners recognizing the high school. So we have 15 light posts that we have at the school. We have the 7 right along the front entrance, which are a little bit smaller, that we have the hardware installed. So we take the banners down each year as far as what we have. So given the circumstances, the idea was let's put up banners this year to recognize the class of 2020. So as people drive through the campus, they will see those banners. And then in the rear of the building, by the Tech Ed building, the senior parking lot, those banners are a little bit higher. So they may be visible, maybe not too well, but they will be visible. And we also have larger banners down in the by the gym. So we have 4 banners down in the gym, large banners, 4 banners in the senior lot, and then the 7 along the walkway.
Great, thank you, Bill. Are you still planning fresh start for incoming freshmen? Have you discussed alternatives if social distancing guidelines don't allow kids and staff to get together? What we've said on here week after week is that we are looking at all summer programmings from the perspective, from the belief system that we'll be still in some sort of remote setting. And so I know Bill's been focused on these. Bill, do you want to make a comment specific to Fresh Start?
Fresh Start, we haven't made a final decision because that's something that takes place a little later in August. As far as any summer programs, summer school, things like that, we are working on models that those will be remote for the initial summer school programming. Fresh Start was one of those things that we've addressed very briefly, given that it's a little bit later, but we will be working on alternatives if we have to do something remotely online, or possibly even smaller groups. But that's the next discussion that we need to have, at least at the high school level, for the summer program.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Oh boy, this is a complicated question. Someone who says they're willing to tutor students who've been struggling when school begins in August. Is it possible to do, or do you need some type of education certification? So we've had a number of these kinds of, I won't call them requests, but people volunteering to do that. So 2 seconds on the legal issue here. The legal issue for us is how to assemble those groups of people and make that available to the community without putting the district in a position, or the districts in a position where it looks like we're endorsing anyone to do that. So we have a number of people, thank you for that, for volunteering to do that. And we're trying to figure out how we might do that and make that available to parents who wish to have their kids have that extra kind of support. So that'll be something we'll be hopefully trying to figure out in the next number of weeks. How will incoming freshmen take exams to qualify for honors classes? So this is largely a math and world language issue usually. Bill, is that true?
Yes, we will not be doing those exams this year, but through the transition meetings with the guidance and working with the teachers from the sending schools is based on their placement. So we do have that in place.
And largely, I think I've heard you say a number of times we'll be erring on students taking courses that they want to be able to take.
Yep.
Great. Is there any update on the junior prom being rescheduled to the fall or spring?
No update. It's still in discussion. Some of the discussion has been to do a combined junior senior prom next spring, but we're taking a look at different dates and different venues when we can have that.
Okay. There are some other comments here about if we could figure out ways to hang them up in the 4 towns, we should do that. I see a number of comments like that. And Bill, we can certainly, if there's some interest in doing that, we can certainly work with the town administrators in those places to help you do that. I hope you're working with the incoming superintendent, Dr. Costa, for SAU 90. So I've actually been meeting with Dr. Costa since January. I think that was when the appointment took place. And have continued to work with the current SAU 90 superintendent, who's a good friend, and Dr. Costa throughout this process. And we've actually just discussed this week how to begin to transition that more over to working with Dr. Costa. We have some meetings. We have a meeting in particular, someone asked earlier about math, to make sure that Hampton is making decisions around math at the middle level that match up and support kids as they come to Winnicott High School, because we've had some challenges in that area. We want to make sure that that happens, and we have a meeting actually scheduled for Monday that both the middle school principal and Dr. Costa will be taking part in. So yeah, we've actually worked very hard to make sure that Dr. Costa, as a new superintendent, gets the support that she needs, and certainly has the relationship with us that needs to be in place to make sure that students have access to everything that we want to give them access to. Mr. McGowan, you have some senior parents here who are willing to do whatever it takes to pull off graduation. The person wanted to reiterate that. Thank you for that. I know, Bill, you want to make a comment on that?
No, thank you. Many have provided input, and as we get close to some of these, as we finalize some of these plans, there will probably be places for parents to assist.
Great. Please consider separate proms as well. And I know Bill is. Early on in these, I'm not sure if you were the person who asked that question was here for the first call, but I know early on when the junior prom was canceled, Bill spent a lot of time, his people spent a lot of time looking at the possibility of a fall event, and has run into some complications around that, and I know continues to be open to looking at all the options. When will students be, textbooks? I would say this is largely a June 1st through the 4th event. We're looking, that's the week I've sort of outlined for principals across our schools to have people return materials. I would think that would be for seniors as well. Bill, am I right about that?
The other option, and again, we'd have to make sure how we do the two things at the same time. When the seniors come in, when we determine that plan for the pickup of caps and gowns, could we also have a place for them to drop off the textbooks?
Okay, so that'll be part of the announcement this coming week. So part of those announcements, at worst, June 1st to 4th, possibly as part of the cap and gown pickup. Possible to send out a parent survey to parents and seniors to get input on graduation banners, how to honor these kids. Only way to fairly get our input. Bill, have a comment on that?
Well, I mean, we held off the survey for both the students, and we did survey the parents 2 weeks ago. What the next steps and what those questions would look like. So let me work with my staff. I've got some ideas as far as what the best way, what those questions should be, and how to get that information out. So we will work on that early this week. And if we do have a survey, I'll get it out next Friday. But it's just one of those things, what questions should we ask? So if the parents have some specific questions, please email me and we'll try to incorporate that into a survey.
Yeah, and again, I just want to make sure because not everything is possible, right? There are parameters that Bill's working within. I tend to be the person probably holding him most accountable for those parameters in conversations with the commissioner and other superintendents in terms of what we can do. And I know that they're trying to do everything that they can do within those parameters to guarantee the safety of our communities. Bill, I see some comments here about the banners, and some people want them at the school and some people want them in their towns. And it may be that we could have them at the school through the events you're going to do, and then figure out a way to have the towns take them after that. But I see somebody saying about kids had their own individual banners. And I think Bill commented the last time that he was with us, and I know again today, that those banners are large, they're expensive, and that there is an effort underway to make sure kids have. Am I okay saying this, Bill?
Yes.
Have a replica or have a
Okay.
pennant version of the banner.
We have a pennant version. Actually, one of our students is designing that. We're just finalizing that, so that will go to press sometime next week. I did see the proofs for the banners for the high school. Those I saw the proof on yesterday. So those will be being processed shortly. What I can do is, the problem with the banners is that based on the mounting hardware that the different towns have, it's going to be size specific as far as what the banner is. I can reach out to some of the town officials to see how many poles they have, and get some pricing for the town officials, or we can work with them to see what it would look like to maybe at least get 1 or 2 banners in each of the towns.
Yeah, great. Let's see. Is there some way? Is there some way students? This is why I like doing this so much. I say I don't know how people could sign yearbooks, and someone says, is there some way that they could sign a virtual or online yearbook? Yearbook companies are doing lots of interesting things right now, so it could be that's worth an idea worth looking into.
I'll talk to Ms. Harris and find out what we can do, if we can set something up. So.
Yeah, it's great. Someone says post pictures of the banners on social media. Oh, we absolutely will. Thank you for that. We absolutely will do that.
You want them now, or can you wait until I get the banner?
Let's wait until they're up. What will be the situation regarding use of the library at WHS with CDC recommendations? So I'm assuming this is a question about social distancing, and right now the temporary order from the governor around 10 students. What we know as we go into this return to school conversation is that there are a lot of things out there right now that are very, very difficult to do. So, I'll just give you an example. And since Bill's on with us today, we'll talk about Winnicott High School, a school of 1,000 kids, and the concept of social distancing. And I think we talked about this the last 2 weeks. There are school districts in other countries, there are school districts in other states that are looking to do double sessions, split sessions in some way, as one way to deal with social distancing. That has a whole host of other complications to it, for high schools, for elementary schools, for middle schools. And so that's why we put these groups together to study that, because right now we don't know. What we know is we have to plan to deal with these probabilities in terms of the conditions that we will be given to operate under. And the library is one of those places, and cleanings, and as Mr. Farrar said earlier, testing and all of those kinds of things. We simply don't know. But again, what we've made a commitment to do is to put this process together and have some answers by the 12th of June in terms of a report. So someone says, Bill, you might check with Hampton Academy because they appear to be doing the virtual signing of yearbooks. Thank you for that. I heard something about senior pictures on Instagram. Do you know anything about that? We do, right, Mr. McGowan?
Yes, we do. I do know that the senior class offices have put a thing on Instagram. I do know they've contacted all the seniors, but let me reach out to that student and find out how that's going along and how we can get that now. Initially, we wanted to keep it closed, so only the senior class would be able to post to that. But let me see how that is, and once that's finalized, we'll get that out so everybody can see it.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, and we talked about, we just want to make sure students' rights are respected. We want to, we'd like to do that on those on Twitter. There are some districts that are doing some great things, taking those profiles and getting them out on Twitter is another way, and we'd love to do that as well. Yes, another question on the banners, and Mr. McGowan said that we're looking at hanging them at the school. We're looking at the possibility then off of this call of whether they could be hung in our towns. We will absolutely look into that. Thank you. It's extremely important, it's extremely important that we do everything possible in our power to honor these seniors that won't be getting the graduation that is so important to that. I hope that what you hear this morning is that's exactly how we're going about this, and that's exactly how Mr. McGowan and his team are going at this. That is our goal, to do everything, and we've tried to listen carefully to ideas from other states around graduation, to ideas from other districts in New Hampshire, and steal liberally from them if there are good ideas in terms of great ways to honor our kids. And we will continue to do that. And my guess is that by the time this plan goes out on Friday, it will continue to evolve, because we'll continue to add pieces to it. So yes, thank you for that comment. Thank you to SAU administrators and staff, and Winnicott, thank you. We really appreciate that. And it's, I think I've told people on here, our mantra has been no idea is too crazy. And that continues to be our mantra in terms of figuring out how to best to honor our families and kids. Gabrielle gives us the, this is the posting of the Instagram, right?
Correct. Yep.
I'm not an Instagrammer, so I don't know, but it says Winnicott 2020 grads is the Instagram account. And yes, that was sent out, Bill, to all the seniors through the senior class officers, I believe.
Yes, I mean, a few weeks ago. So, but we will get an update on that. And yes, to the next question, that if it is up for the student to post that and send that post that information. That was a template that was created, to my understanding. And if you have difficulty, to send it to the class officer. But I will get that cleared up and get information out again to the whole class.
Drive-in graduation. So there were some districts that were in New Hampshire that were talking about using, Bill, I think one was talking about using a speedway, some other places. And we tuned into those conversations more than a little bit. They pretty quickly abandoned those ideas for a variety. There are some people out in more central New Hampshire, northern central Massachusetts who had access to a movie drive-in theater that was local, and they are still proceeding with some of those plans, but we did not, because of accessibility and some of what we heard from Oyster River and some others. I watched a college webinar at UVM. They really encouraged community services. How do students do that? I'm assuming the question means how do they do it now? How do they access those kinds of things? Bill, I have a few thoughts on that, but do you?
I mean, again, I do know that different students I've seen are doing food drives and stuff like that. So I think if they continue to do that community service, just document that. Clearly, there was a form that they would fill out in school, but I would say document that information and forward it to my attention. I'll make sure that we get it to the right place to get recorded. But as far as currently for us to find out what areas need community service is a little difficult for us at this time. But I would think that if anybody's out there doing something, let us know what you're doing, and we'll make note of it.
And Bill, beyond that, we know that they exist in communities. I mean, Caroline, we know there are food pantries. We know there are other food distributions besides ours. We know there are people doing things for our communities now. Some of them people have given us reference to on these calls from week to week.
That's right. That's right. And we have a whole food resource list that's posted on our websites. It's not only our districts, it's Gather nh.org. They're at Seabrook Rec and Center School every single Thursday. UNH has done a phenomenal job. They just put out this food finding map for New Hampshire. You can just put in your zip code and it pops up all the resources all around you wherever you are, which is, can be very helpful to anyone, but also families in transition. So moving around a lot, if you have unstable housing, experiencing homelessness, and you might be in a different county and not be near where you used to get food, that map is phenomenal. So yes, absolutely. And so many people have stepped up to help with that. We're very lucky in our communities.
Yeah. So there are some opportunities out there.
Mm-hmm.
Diana, I don't want to answer this question. Can you take this organization show to Washington, please? No. we have enough to do right here in SAU 21 communities. We have a lot to do. Thank you, though. Here's an thank you. We really appreciate that. This person says being on a scenario team at another educational institution, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation. It's not easy work, and there are no definite answers. The tough part, right, is that there are lots of questions. I see a few more coming that I'm going to end up saying I don't know, and that's because I think it's important to say I don't know. We all think it's important. We've said I don't know way too many times on these Saturday morning calls, but we don't know these answers, and this is such an evolving situation. But we will continue to try to get answers and put together plans that best support our and students. Will masks be required at prom? And when can we go back to school? And when we go back to school? So we don't know. What we know is that we're planning. That is one of the scenarios. I mean, if masks are required when we go back to school, they'd be required at the prom, would be my guess. And so we don't know about back to school, right? But we will. We're planning for it. And so, the scenario thinking, that's been one of the questions, is how do we access the number of masks that we might need if that's the case. And that's a big part of the work of that task force we've put together. Thank you, Deb. If any of our students at WHS do community service, they can send the hours to me, dcraft at KRAPF at warriors.winnicott.org, and I can input them to PowerSchool. Thank you so much, Deb. There's a shout out to Mr. McGowan. Kemfrey had given each student a yard sign. The school is also getting yard signs with student names. We are. Banners Night to Tail, and has offered to get pennants for the banners. We are getting banners or pennants. So thank you. Thank you for that. Deb also says she has a Google Doc for community service that students can fill out. Just email her, and we gave you that email address. How about a drive-through graduation at the high school with different, so we are, I'm not going to go into the details of this question, but you must be reading some parts of our notes. So that's all I'm going to say until we have a chance to talk to the senior officers on Monday. But yes, when I talk about a hybrid approach, and Bill talks about a hybrid approach, that's what we're looking at. That's the kind of thing that we're thinking about. It's something that has some in-person components and also has an online component. Can WH surveys be sent out by text? I'm not getting the survey emails. Marcia, I don't know. Bill, do you have a comment on the surveys that you've been putting out and people accessing them?
If they don't get the email, I guess we wouldn't know. So let me find out, because typically we send the link via email. I can work with Jason Saltmarsh as far as how we can get that out via text. The only issue with sending out text is a limit in the text field, but if we can keep that link to that field, I don't see why we could not get the link out.
And Marcia, why don't you send an email directly to Bill so he can help you with your particular situation. Thank you for nervous parent like me. These meetings are very helpful. Thank you for that. Has summer graduation been considered? We're talking about an early June kind of event. We have not given up on the idea of something that would be more in person that might have to come later. Bill, do you have a thought on that?
And I mean, that's one of the things that we've discussed with the students. Our goal is to make sure that we have a ceremony that we have all students be able to participate. We do know that some students may be leaving the area the end of June, early July. So how do we make sure that we recognize those students that are not available? So again, we're taking a look at all options, and if that's something that we have to do based on guidelines and recommendations, it's something that we can look into.
Let me just say that one of the great things for me about meeting with the senior class officers is that they were concerned about people. They were the people that brought up, we're concerned about people who are leaving on July 1st. We know of our friends who are doing certain things after high school who will be gone, and we'd really like to make sure that we do something that could include in whatever way possible all of us, because they were very concerned about people who wouldn't be able to take part. And so we want to continue to try to honor that. There's a comment about face coverings. Yes, I think, and again, I think face coverings will be a part of those discussions about return to school and summer and all those kinds of things. Jody's question, does this apply to middle schools? I assume by this you mean everything that we're talking about a hybrid approach and those kinds of things. And the answer is yes. I've been working with each of our elementary principals each week, particularly around their plans for the end of the year. And everyone would echo what Bill's saying here, right? About trying to come up with some kind of a hybrid model. And so I'm thinking, and just about everybody has some sort of in-person component that they've been talking about. Again, I don't know what's happening in Hampton. It's not mine. But in terms of our districts, that's been the conversation, yes. There are some suggestions here for community service, roadside cleanup, yes. Yes to the question to the comment about military service. That is one of the groups that we know we lose on July the 1st. And so yes, that's been the concern and the thought. Is there any information available regarding impact on fall sports? Oh, look at the time, Bill. I'm going to turn that question over to you. You have a comment on that? I probably have a follow-up that I can make, but go ahead.
I have heard nothing, but I can just turn that over to the NHIAA because they're the ones that make those decisions. But we haven't heard anything as of now.
Yeah, I will tell you what I heard. Actually, I think it was this morning. And it was a comment from the NCAA that said that they are planning right now because they expect that their fall sports program will be impacted. And so if that's the view of the NCAA, my guess is that will happen to us, and that we probably, and again, we as the NHIAA in this case, need to be planning for that. So listen, because we've sort of thought of everything in terms of half empty here. What do we need to plan for? I would really strongly encourage the NHIAA and at the local level, our athletic director and coaches to begin thinking about as if fall sports will be impacted. I believe they will in one form or another. And Tony, it's a great question. We will make sure, and we have if you were on at the beginning of this call, you heard Mr. Farrar say that athletics is falling under that operations working group. And I am certain that the discussion there will be those same three scenarios of rolling closures, not opening on time, opening on time, and how they impact fall sports as well. So thanks for pointing that out, but that'll be part of that task force group and their discussions. What was the reason? Possibly you were not on when. So the commissioner in our call on Wednesday, because some of you may know that the Air Force style graduation was actually in his advice. He, in questioning on Wednesday, acknowledged that the Air Force graduation would not conform to the governor's executive order on planned gatherings of 10 or less people. That if you watch the entire tape, The cadets, even though they are well trained, they did not keep social distancing after the event. You can see that very clearly on the tape. And we've been told by the department that we would need to be able to ensure social distancing both before and after. And he acknowledged in that discussion that the Air Force graduation would not conform to the governor's 10-person or less executive order. And that's why, and that's what I hear from my colleagues across the state as to why most, I think over 90%, are going with a hybrid model of some in-person activity along with an online activity. So we'll wait. You're welcome. We'll wait for another moment to see if there are any more questions.
I just want to at least acknowledge that, like we said earlier, there was a few people that couldn't get in by phone. If anybody was concerned with that, just let them know that we do record this and we put this up on the SAU website that you can go back in and, you know, listen to the first 5 or 10 minutes that you may have missed. So we do make that available. And again, I apologize.
And there's actually an entire library of these.
There
We
is.
don't know whether there are 7 or 8 of them, but we know they're all there.
They're there.
all of them. So
if you really feel like, if you're really desperate to binge watch something.
Hey.
Sorry.
So one more thing. Oh, I hope not. I hope not. Please don't leave. Please don't leave. We one of the reasons for this work that we're about to do is to make sure that we can provide good information for parents and hopefully help you relieve some of that stress around what's happening here. And so again, I would say to you, as we've said all along, whatever we can do to support you, please reach out to any of the people here. You know, Raymond, I know he's on the call or was on the call, Raymond Pillsbury, any of our educators, and we will help wherever we can. Let me make one more sort of announcement. So we're going to do this again next week. We'll have a session next week. We are going to, then is the Memorial Day weekend, believe it or not. And we're going to skip the Memorial Day weekend and really reassess when we're going to come back. When we'll come back with these, I'm sure it will be around that return to school documentation. And that may mean that's going to mean we're going to be off for a minimum of a couple of weeks till we have something more to report. So we will do next week and then miss that following week. So we do have parents. There's one more question here. We do have parents, and we intend to get student voice in this by forums or surveys or those kinds of pieces to it. We also intend to do parent surveys, and we intend to work with our emergency preparedness partners as well. So thank you for the question. But yes, we do have parents, and we're going to publish, I hope it's Monday, the list of all the people that are on the task force and people who are on individual working groups as well. So, Mr. McGowan, thank you so much.
You're welcome
for joining us. It's great to have you on with us for a second time. You draw big audiences, and we appreciate that. And we'll see you on Monday for the meeting with the seniors. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. I hope Happy Mother's Day to those to whom that applies. And I hope you do find some time on, I wish I could say this beautiful weekend, on this cold, windy weekend, to take some time for yourselves, for your families, and to get away from all of this for some period of time. And thank you so much for your support and for joining us. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Everybody.